Sunil Sharma.
So, is the tech industry becoming too crowded for new startups to not only stand out, but to thrive in this current marketplace? Well, our next speaker thinks that there's a time to compete and a time to collaborate. So to tell us more, we're going to welcome to the stage the CEO of home audio superstar company Sonos and Kitchener's own Patrick Spence.
Thanks, Sunil, and good morning, everybody. It's fantastic to be back in Canada. I was born in Kitchener, as Sunil mentioned. I went to university at Western, and I spent over a decade working in Waterloo. Being here brings back a lot of great memories. Back in 1998, I took a job in a small town in Ontario, working for a pager company that no one had ever heard of. My friends thought I was absolutely nuts, but they had a great vision, an amazing team, and I saw a big opportunity ahead. You've probably heard of the product now. It's the BlackBerry. We thought it could change the world, and it did. 14 years later, after going from 20 million in revenue to 2 billion in revenue, and from 2 countries to 162 countries, I left BlackBerry to join another small company, Sonos. I saw something that I had seen at BlackBerry as well, which is a strong vision, amazing team, and a huge opportunity ahead. Just like BlackBerry, Sonos started as the underdog with an incredible product market fit. We created the world's first wireless home sound system. The critics said it could never succeed, and yet it disrupted an entire industry. Over time, we built out our family of products, and they were so successful that big tech companies charged into our space, making their own versions of our smart speakers. And they turned our company into an underdog again. In the end, RIM struggled to compete in this environment. Sonos is on a stronger trajectory, not because the challenges are any different, but because we've really learned what we're up against. And we know a lot more about what it takes to thrive in a world of big tech. I know a lot of you are probably trying to figure that out for your own company. So today, I wanted to share a few ideas, a few thoughts that might be helpful along the way. First, let me start with a little good news. Starting a company today actually comes with real advantages. For example, if you wanted to start a company 20 years ago, the first thing you had to do was build a bunch of infrastructure. You had a lot of software to write, servers to run, data to manage. All that friction made it harder to do the work that you probably really cared about. And it kept a lot of people from really getting their ideas into the world. Then big tech came along, and everything got a lot easier. Today, when you need web services, you just go to AWS or Azure. When you need a distribution platform, you can go to the App Store or Google Play or Amazon. When you need customers, you can market on Facebook, Instagram, Google. Without all of that friction, you could focus 100% of your time on building your product, right? Well, the flip side is that once you're on big tech's platforms, you have to pay big tech's rents, and you have to play by big tech's rules. Not only that, but you also lose out on the opportunity to differentiate yourself. When Sonos was young, we worked extremely hard to build the foundation for the wireless network platform for multi-room audio. It took huge engineering resources and a lot of time. It also resulted in patents. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. For a while, our inventions gave us a significant first mover advantage, but it wasn't long before other companies began to copy this and you could buy it off the shelf. And suddenly, this infrastructure that we'd worked so hard on wasn't really the key differentiator we expected it to be. Now, maybe you're thinking, I don't actually want to build all this infrastructure. And that's fair, not every startup needs to. But the thing we all have to deal with, like it or not, is the fact that with the big tech platforms, anyone can build a product in a matter of months. More to the point, they can build your product in a matter of months. Everyone knows this, including investors. That's why they push startups to capture the biggest customer base in the shortest amount of time at almost any cost. They say you should take a bunch of money, give your product away, capture as much market as possible, run everybody else out of business, win a quasi-monopoly, and then raise prices to the point where you can profit. Now, some investors will try to tell you that's the only way to run your business, but it's not. And that's good, because when you're doing growth at all costs, there are basically 3 possible outcomes. 1, you don't grow fast enough and your company doesn't make it. 2, you grow fast enough to spook big tech, and one of those giants either copies your product or buys your company. Or 3, you grow big, but you don't grow strong, because the business just isn't sustainable. This approach to tech might create a few new billionaires, but it ignores the elements of really building a sustainable business for the long run, and things like unit economics. In a lot of cases, this approach also serves to concentrate more power in the hands of a few big companies. And it incentivizes those companies to trample everything in their way, sometimes laws and regulations. As the people of Toronto know well, and we are seeing with Google's Sidewalk Labs experiment, legitimate customer concerns can really be set to the side in this thirst for more and more data and more business. In a moment like this, I think we have a responsibility to ask, is this really the best that tech can do? And if it's not, what can we do to make it better? Now, some have compared this situation to a baseball game. By providing the platforms, big tech is acting like an umpire. But by offering products and services on those platforms, they're also fielding their own teams, if you will. No surprise then that big tech keeps winning, or that startups are finding it even harder to play ball. I would actually use a different analogy. To me, it's like a certain board game you've probably played. Big tech owns the railroads, the utilities, Park Place, and Boardwalk. Every time you go around the board, you're paying big tech's rents. And there's barely any space for others that want to compete. But I also want to emphasize that we're not powerless here. This industry has always had room for people that want to do something different and want to think long term. At least in my experience, there's a lot of demand for what we offer. Some of you may know that we took Sonos public last year. It was a big decision for us, and there was no shortage of people who said it was the wrong decision. They feared that big tech companies would be eager to really take our customers and replicate our products and would do whatever it took to actually get them. We heard those people out, but every time we realized that if we followed the alternative path they laid out for Sonos, we would be compromising what matters most to us and what matters most to our customers. Simply put, Sonos exists to help people listen better. Freedom of choice, the ability to listen to whatever you want from any service, has been a fundamental part since the beginning. It's what our customers expect. Our speakers bring all the music and all the sound you care about to every room in your home. So if you want to use Amazon's Alexa to queue up a track from Spotify, that's great. If you want to use Apple's AirPlay to stream from Tidal, have at it. The thing we care about is that you can access any music, any service you want, and it sounds amazing. Big tech can't offer that. They have their own services, their own assistants, and their walled gardens to maintain. So it was clear to our team that Sonos had to remain independent and to achieve sustainable long-term growth if we were going to continue to deliver the kind of experiences that our customers expect. Now, that isn't easy. As an independent company, sometimes we have to compete with big tech for obvious reasons. Sometimes we have to cooperate. After all, these companies have developed experiences that we're glad to have on our platform because they create richer experiences for our customers. Big tech is big for a lot of reasons. Delivering what consumers want is one of them. And usually we have to compete with them at the same time. Business school types call this coopetition, but I don't really like that word. It implies a win-win scenario that's on an equal playing field. More often, the terms of your partnership will be a delicate dance, or they're win-win in the sense that big tech wins and you get to survive. For me, the only constant is that old quote from Intel co-founder Andy Grove, "Only the paranoid survive." So I'd like to take the remainder of my time to tell you a little bit about how to be paranoid and survive in this world. To me, it really comes down to 5 things, and 5 tips to control your own destiny, if you will. The first is do one thing better than anyone else. Unlike big tech, you have the ability to really focus and do one thing that matters to you and your customers. You have the opportunity to do that better than anyone else. Like I was saying earlier, freedom of choice is that core to Sonos' mission, and it's something we do better than anyone else, and it's something we can do uniquely. That means a lot at our company and to our customers. It's something that big tech can never really duplicate given those walled gardens. Another great example is Shopify, a great Canadian success story. They built an amazing platform for small businesses. And they're up against Amazon, but they've built a set of services that Amazon can't replicate in trying to be everything to all people. Here's another example, DuckDuckGo. Could you imagine being an investor considering investing in a search engine 10 years ago when Google was dominating in the way it was? Well, that was the DuckDuckGo proposition. Today, that looks like a wise investment because there is room in the market for a privacy-focused internet search engine, and that's what DuckDuckGo does better than anyone else, something Google's not going to be able to replicate. My second point would be financially disciplined from day one. I've been thinking about this a lot given the current wave of the IPOs that we've seen. Some of these companies are running really the growth at all cost playbook. They've raised enormous amounts of capital, they've been growing incredibly fast, and they're reporting billion-dollar losses every year. Their business models are pretty unsustainable, and investors are treating companies accordingly. On the flip side, we have Zoom. They didn't raise a lot of cash early on. Instead, they focused on product market fit and really sustainable growth and getting to profitability. That model gave Zoom a lot of control over its future. It also impressed Wall Street. In the month since they've gone public, their stock prices have nearly doubled. In real life, if someone tells you they saw a unicorn, it's probably a hallucination. Well, some of the tech unicorns are hallucinations as well, as they have everything figured out except some of the fundamentals. A related point would be take the right money. When you're on the path to profitability, you can afford to be discerning about whose money you're taking. You don't have to say yes to every investor that comes along with a bag of cash and a lot of ideas about what to do about your business. I can't tell you how important this has been for Sonos. The early investors we chose weren't interested in making a quick buck through an acquisition. They believed what we believed, which is delivering strong returns over the long term. So that's exactly what we've been able to do. By building a sustainable business, we've achieved that rare feat of taking $100 million that we raised in primary capital and building that into a business that does over $1 billion in revenue today. The fourth one would be to build your moat. For all the reasons I mentioned, it's never been easier to copy someone's product. So it's important to develop your intellectual property. Take Sonos's multi-room home audio platform. That technology alone garnered more than 100 families of patents. These protections are absolutely essential because when big tech starts coming at you and is ready to storm your castle, you want to be able to raise that drawbridge, and intellectual property is an important way to do that. Finally, when the giants appear, don't get distracted. This one's especially important because if you do everything right, the odds are that big tech is going to come after you. Two quick stories from RIM on this one. In '98, we were ready to launch BlackBerry, and there had never really been a solution like this in the marketplace. RIM was on the bleeding edge of wireless communication, and big tech knew it. We rightly expected that the giants would come into the space, but instead of one, we got two working together, Microsoft and Qualcomm. Just as we were launching, they formed a partnership and rushed into our space with their own communication service. Were we worried? Sure. But we also had a big advantage. We were really focused on one solution and trying to do one thing very, very well. So we stuck to our guns, focused, executed well, and in the end, we were able to win out. These other companies were very distracted. The opposite thing happened a few years later when Apple came into our space. They launched the iPhone, a touch screen. We thought we had to chase them. So we strayed from our strengths and our customers, and we brought out a device that wasn't ready. The BlackBerry storm hit the market with a thud. I'll never forget that experience. The lesson was do what you're good at, build for the customers you have, and don't let big tech throw you off your path. One last tip, know what big tech can offer you and know what they can take away. One of the defining moments of my career was when I got the first Amazon Echo into our home. I saw the way our kids started to actually interact with it, and I could see that voice was an important part of the future of home audio. The experience led to some strategic partnerships. We started working day and night to bring voice assistants to our speakers. We knew this was going to be very vital, just like streaming was in our first wave of growth. But to return to Andy Grove, partnership and paranoia go hand in hand. In October 2017, we were right about to roll out our first voice-enabled speaker, the Sonos One. We were announcing its availability with two voice assistants, a world first, Amazon Alexa and Google Assistant. Their parent companies, of course, are fierce competitors, and both had a speaker that we were competing with. To say the negotiations were intense would be a huge understatement. In fact, the morning of our product launch, as reporters were taking their seats, I was running between two separate holding rooms with the two different companies, making sure that each were on board with the announcement. It didn't feel like we were preparing as much for a product launch as a UN summit. In so many ways, this is what it means to live in a big tech world. You have to go toe-to-toe with the giants every day. Sometimes you're sparring, sometimes you're dancing, and in either case, I hope these tips are a good way to stay on your feet. We'll have to see if this remains true. I think it's possible we're headed for a world where you can follow all these steps, and even then, your only choice isn't to fall into the arms of big tech or be crushed under its boot. If that's the case, I think we'll need to ask the regulators to step in. But no matter what happens, one thing is true. In an era of big tech, independent companies have never been more vital to the future we're all going to live in. Because people deserve choices, and you in this room are the ones that can give people these choices. So I encourage you to stay independent, do what's right for your customers, and they'll do what's right for you. Thank you.